Kosovo today. It's the most dangerous part of Europe. The province that rebels want to turn into Europe's newest country. The site of bitter fighting and brutal reprisal by the Serbs who rule it. And this week has been a grim week for Kosovo. For journalists too, Kosovo is a perilous place. I have heard more shooting and shelling and seen more horror in the past week than in many years of journalism. I'd never heard of REQAKUT. Why would you? A tiny village of a few hundred people, until I walked up a mountain path into a scene of almost indescribable horror. But we journalists have to describe it and to show it. We are your witnesses to great deeds and to barbarity. But here we showed only hands and feet and fleeting images of the corpses of 40 teenagers and men, because the reality could not be shown on television.
They were all shot trying to escape, over.
Do journalists have influence? Yes. These pictures were shown around the world just hours after these villagers were murdered.
Jesus Christ.
William Walker, the chief international monitor, came here and was about to leave without comment, until I persuaded him that this was a deed that demanded words.
Ambassador Walker, what can you say about this?
As a layman, it looks like executions. It looks like people with absolutely no value for human life murdering these men who, to me, look like farmers. They look like workmen. They look like villagers.
2 days later, Walker was ordered out of Kosovo. The Serbs said that by blaming them, he'd overstepped the mark. As journalists, we try not to get involved, to remain dispassionate observers. But the following day, when the relatives of the dead went to see their loved ones, how can you fail to be moved, to be influenced by a girl who has lost her father, by these terrible laments? Journalists are often forced to react quickly to unforeseen events. Back in REQAKUT this week, we had to react fast. Intense shooting broke out. We sought cover.
That's very close.
And filmed what we could, including proof that we were there. This is the 5th day of shooting and shelling around this village. This morning, the firing is particularly intense. But again, we don't know who the targets are. We wear bulletproof jackets, we drive in armoured Land Rovers, and sometimes we drive them out quickly.
Just move now.
There's no doubt that working amid this conflict in any capacity is a challenge. As a journalist, how do you tell the truth when it's not just events that are fought over, for example, who burned these buildings, who fired first, who's to blame, but words that are contested? For example, are the people who once controlled this town terrorists, as the authorities would say, or freedom fighters, as the majority here would have it? I prefer the word rebels because that is factually correct. But how do you remain impartial amid a bitterly divided land? Well, with some difficulty. A situation which is deteriorating by the day. Kosovo is today's Bosnia, a campaign of terror against ethnically different people, a brutal onslaught against political enemies. But this week, for once, the brutality was out in the open. We found it, we could show it, we were there. And that is the best you can expect from a journalist.